Welcome to our continuing study in the book of James, and I'm excited about this week. By now, many of you know June 7th is when we're going to be coming back here on campus. And I'd love to hear from you. If you have questions about what Sunday looks like, I may not have all the answers, but I will do everything I can to get them. And so if you have questions, feel free to comment, feel free to reach out to me, and I will do everything I can to get you the answers that you're looking for. One of the things that hits us is immediately as we get into chapter 2 today is something very practical for all of us. There's definitely a lot of polarities. Now, what is a polarity? Well, think of this, North and South Pole, right? There's these competing ends, these opposite ends of a spectrum. And right now, there's so many different polarities in our culture. So some of these very common ones right now, vaccines or no vaccines, masks or no masks, social distancing or not social distancing, opening or closing. There's a lot of different places that we can fall depending on our political leanings, depending on our health histories. And to be honest with you, there's almost an infinite number of variables that can determine how you're looking at and what's contributing to your perspective in this moment. And so what I want to do today, because we're about to head into a moment where we're gathering as the church, I want to give us from James some practical guidance and some practical wisdom on how we as a church and how your leaders have arrived at a decision that for some of you may seem frustrating and for others of you may seem good. And the decision is this, we're going to come back on campus and we're going to be wearing masks. We're asking everyone to wear a mask if they come back on campus. And for some, we know that that's going to be an encouragement, and for others, it may be a discouragement. And so what does the Bible say? Well, one of the things I want to just lay right out here is the Bible has no such category or no such verse that says, you shall wear a mask in the global pandemic. That's not what we're looking at. But the principle that James has here laid out for us today in James chapter 2 lines up perfectly and meets this moment. Because this is what he says. And he says, verse 1 of chapter 2 says this, my brothers and sisters, don't show partiality as you hold to the faith of Jesus Christ, the Lord of glory. Now, the word there for partiality, it means to receive presence. It's a compound word. Now, what's a compound word? A compound word is two words smashed together. Football, baseball, these are compound words. And the compound words that we have here together is one of the words for face, and one of the words for receive, right? So it's this idea of receiving someone, of taking in someone based on how they look. Partiality, right? It's making an impression, a judgment call. And so here's the thing. This is where this principle meets us in our current moment, is that you will inevitably judge someone based on your particular perspective on whether or not they choose to wear a mask, right? If you have friends that are sharing particular information on their social media, you judge them. If you have particular friends that are sharing things or are saying, I'm going to wear a mask or I'm not, right, based on your perspective, you are going to show some kind of level, some kind of judgment against that person. And here, James is zeroing in on a particular type of partiality in these hearers that he wrote this letter to. And the particular type, right, was rich or poor. And this goes back to a thread that James has been showing us since chapter 1. Verse 9 and 10, right? He says, let the lowly brother boast in his exaltation and the rich boast in his humiliation. So this has been and has always been, right, a fault line in the church, right, between those who have and those who have not. How does Jesus bring diverse people together? And guys, we are getting ready for this kind of moment. That some of you, when you heard, hey, we're going to require masks when we gather at spots, it made you angry. And others of you who heard we were going to be requiring masks as we gathered back together, were relieved probably. And so what I want to do is want to call us to take on the life and the faith of Jesus. That's what James is doing here. He says, hold no partiality as you hold to the faith of Jesus. And this has been something that James has been guiding us through, right? That we put our faith in Jesus, and that also leads us to demonstrate the faith of Jesus. And so the words here are important, that the faith of Jesus is a certain type of life, is a certain way of living. And it's a way of living, right, that doesn't show partiality, that doesn't take people at face value. And so it can be very easy as we're heading back into public to see people who wear masks. If we think we should be wearing masks, you see people wearing a mask and you're like, hey, that's my tribe, that's my person. And if you walk into a store and you think, I don't want to wear masks, I don't see the point, or I don't understand, or I don't think it's right of us to do that. You see someone not wearing a mask, you're like, hey, you, me, I get you. And we break ourselves up along these lines. And what James is saying is that partiality, that judgment calls, that first impressions should not form the basis of our faith and how we interact with each other. He says this, verse 5, particularly with the rich and poor dynamic, James says, listen, my beloved brothers, has God not chosen those who are poor in this world to be rich in faith and heirs of the kingdom, which he had promised those to love him? James is saying, look, you're having or your have-nots, that doesn't contribute to whether or not God invites you into his kingdom. And so the same is true of us. Regardless on what you feel and your perspective, whether you're a medical professional, whether you're a lawyer, whether you're an accountant, whether you work in a construction site, you probably have an opinion about masks on or off. You probably have an opinion about economy, open or closed. You probably have an opinion about a lot of these things. But when it comes to gathering together as the church, James is calling us, right, to put aside our tribalism and to hold the faith of Jesus in a way that we are quick to show mercy. And that's the conclusion of James's encouragement here, is he says this. He says all the way down, he makes this key point in verse 8. He says, if you really fulfill the royal law according to Scripture, you shall love your neighbor as yourself, you're doing well. James says it's right to say, hey, I'm supposed to love my neighbor, but partiality prevents us from loving our neighbor. Looking someone up and down and like making a quick judgment call about what they believe and who they are, that is one way to let partiality and divisiveness creep into the church. And guys, we are approaching this moment. We're here, where we look at brothers and sisters in the church and we see maybe where they're falling politically, we see where they're falling in their opinions about masks on or off, and we can quickly promote our tribal camps over and forget that what unites us in Jesus is far more important than what may divide us in this moment of COVID-19. So this is what James says. This is the message. This is the now what? Verse 12 and verse 13. So speak and act. Okay, so this is a whole way of life. The faith of Jesus comprises our words. It also comprises our actions. So speak and so act, James says, as those who are to be judged under the law of liberty. What's the measuring standard for the Christian life? It's the law of freedom. It's the law of mercy. And verse 13 says this, judgment is without mercy to one who has shown no mercy. Mercy triumphs over judgment. Another way of reading that is that it says judgment is merciless to the one who shows no mercy. That if we're looking for mercy in our life from God, which we are, right? That's what James says. The law of liberty is a law of mercy, a law of freedom, and also a law of judgment, but that judgment's been placed on Jesus. So James is saying, look, we cannot be known as a people who are quick to judge people based on how they look, based on, and understand this, built into the rich-poor dynamic and in our current moment of masks or no masks is also this dynamic of racism, right? That we as Christians are not called to quick judgments about people based on the color of their skin or their culture. That we as Christians are called to foster the faith of Jesus in our lives that withholds judgment, and that His mercy is our first move. And so as you're returning to campus, as we're preparing to come back here, and you may be sensing some angst about, well, I don't want to wear a mask, or what if there are people who aren't wearing masks in spots, so what I'm going to do? I love what our pastor has guided us on and through this whole process is a Philippians 2:4 culture that we're building. It's the culture that says, look out not only for your own interests, right, but also the interests of others. That's another way of saying mercy triumphs over judgment. The mercy that I'm extending to other people is the measure in which I believe I've received mercy from God. And so again, what James is getting at here, my brothers and sisters, don't show any partiality. Don't look at people and put them in a camp based on what they look like when you first meet them. He says mercy triumphs over judgment. We should be a place where people are welcome, regardless of how they dress, regardless of whether or not they show certain political leanings or camps on Facebook or things like that. That if we're claiming the name of Jesus, that we are not going to be a people who looks at someone immediately and makes a snap judgment about them and says, you're important and you're not. That what mercy does is it levels the playing field and it helps us see, hey, what unites us in Jesus. So I just want to encourage you guys, as we get back together on campus, some of you may be experiencing some angst one way or the other. Angst that we're saying, hey, we really would prefer and we're really asking everyone to wear masks. You may say, I disagree with that. You may say, I completely agree with that, and I'm angry at anyone who would suggest otherwise. What I want to do for us as a young adult ministry is say, guys, we have an opportunity because many of us don't fall in a vulnerable category, though some of us do. We don't have the opportunity to sit down with each and every church member and hear all the variables. And so we're making this decision to say, let love take that step of saying we is greater than me. And so this particular here, let's not show any partiality. Let's not try to put people into camps on masks or no masks. And look, James didn't have this particular situation in mind here. He was concerned that the church that he was writing to would not look at someone coming in wearing nice clothes. They didn't have Armani suits back in the first century. But we get it, right? When someone walks in wearing nice things and having nice things, like, oh, this must be a person I want to get to know. Versus someone who walks in and they look dirty and they're saying, hey, again, it's just our basic fallen nature to begin to put people into camps. And James is saying, look, like, that's not the church. What defines us is not what we have, what we don't have. What defines us is not what we believe should be happening in this moment of COVID. What defines us and what unites us is the experience of mercy that we've had. And if we retract that mercy from other people, James says, verse 12 and 13, if we are not people of mercy, we can expect judgment to be merciless. And so the measure of our faith is the measure of our love. How far we extend mercy to other people, it shows how much mercy we feel like we've needed from the Lord and how much we've received from the Lord. 2 questions for you to talk about in your groups this week, 1 spiritual question and 1 care question. And this one's going to push the envelope a little bit in the spiritual question. I want you guys to talk about where you've shown partiality. I want you to talk about and almost have just a time of confession to say, hey, like, here's some ways that I've divided people in my life. And so it may be a conversation talking about wealth. It may be a conversation and time to confess and confront racism in different ways that we've categorized people. Where has partiality shown a pattern of creeping itself into your life? Take some time to confess that and to bring that before the Lord together. I think this could be really healing for us. And then as a caring question, I just really we want to go back to where we started from the beginning. I want you guys to just go back and share a high and low from your past week. What's been a high and what's been a low? And go ahead and share that with each other, and we'll see what surfaces from that. So again, love you guys. Excited to continue our study through James. If you're reading ahead or preparing, today we really covered a big stretch of ground. We got through verses 1 all the way through 13. So again, we'll start with verse 14 when we get together in our study next week. So we'll see you guys soon, and looking forward to June 7th.